So where we left off, we were talking about strings, the anatomy of strings, how to access certain characters in strings, and also like just general string operations, how to combine strings together, how to take characters and also create strings based off that. We are going to do a little bit more with this now, but I just really want to make sure that you all understand how to access certain characters in strings, and also hopefully you guys are able to understand the difference between AP computer science principles, indexing, and normal indexing. I emphasized last week that for some reason, College Board starts off their characters with the index number 1. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you keep going. But pretty much every other language out there, Python, C++, Java, JavaScript, everything else uses 0. You start at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We also talked about how to access specific characters using these indices, and you want to use the brackets. The brackets are going to play a huge role in pretty much every single coding language. Python is no exception. The AP Computer Science Principles test will also use brackets to access specific things within a string. We had a couple examples how to access specific or how to see what characters in a specific index using the brackets and also the index number. So in this case, when we use a string, hi, how are you? And we try to get the 0th character of string, we get H, because if you look at the 0th index, we had a capital H. If we use string 1, so 1 inside of the brackets, that means the first index, which would be this I right here. That's the reason why we have H and then I. When we looked at the number 7, that whatever is indexed in index 7, this is a white space. Like as if you were to tap the space bar, it is literally a white space, which is the reason why when we print this, it'll look like nothing has printed, but indeed there will be a space character there. When we try to get string 15, that is this over here, the question mark. And then when you try to go past that, string 16, there is no such thing as string 16, so you will get an error. So in order to get a specific character, be sure that you use the string name, use the brackets in which you're going, and within which you will put the index number for the specific character that you want to get. Getting multiple characters is also an option. There is a different word for this. I believe it's called splicing. Splicing or splicing? I don't remember if it's splicing or slicing. It's one of those two. If I could remember the difference between the two, I will be sure to get back to you guys on that. But it's one of the two, but it's pretty much getting multiple characters. It's almost like actually using range. So remember, when we used range, we had a start, and then we also had an end. But remember, the start, though it was inclusive, this one right here was inclusive, this one right here was not inclusive. If you want to access multiple characters, you can still use the brackets, but notice that we have start, colon, and then end, but it is not inclusive. Start is inclusive. So starting from a certain index and going up to, but not including a different index. If you leave out a start, so there's no start there, notice it goes straight into the colon, then Python will assume that you're starting from the 0th index. If you have a start but you don't have an end, then it assumes that you want to go all the way up to the end of the string. So like I just want to reemphasize that this is kind of like using range, where range will give you a start and then end. Start inclusive, end is not inclusive. So it'll give you a range of numbers given your parameters. This is the same thing. You have a start and then you have an end. End is not inclusive. It'll go up to but not include that last number. But these two things serve like different purposes. Range will give you a range of numbers, whereas start will give you, or whereas this bracket syntax that we're talking about here will give you all characters from your start up to your end. So doing some examples here. So these will get a little bit trickier, but let's do the easier ones first. We're using the same string, hi, how are you? But we want to start from 0 and go up to, but not including 3. So we start from 0. Oops. Start from 0. What is going on? Start from 0 and go up to, but not including 3. So here's where 3 is, but we do not want to include 3. We are going to exclude 3. So what's going to print here is HI exclamation mark, and that's it. So we start from 0, we have 1, we have 2, we go up to 3, but we do not include 3, so HI exclamation mark is going to be part of the string that we'll print. So we have quite literally grabbed a slice of our string. We're grabbing a portion of it. Which brings us to the next line of code. We have colon and then 3. What do you guys think is going to print out here?
That hurts.
What is going to print out in the second line? Oops. What's going on? You guys remember, if there's nothing there at the very beginning, then you could assume that you start at 0, kind of like how there were shortcuts when you did range. So for this one, oops. Here, assume that the index starts at 0, and yes, exactly. Hi is going to print here also. We start from 0 because there's nothing here. That means start at 0. Then we go all the way up to, but not including 3, so hi will print out again. So these two are equivalent to each other. How about the next line? We have print string 4, and then we have a blank. There's nothing here. But if you recall, if that is the case, if you are missing something at the very end, there's nothing here, right? Then you assume you go all the way up to the very end of the string. That being said, if I do 4 colon and then that's it, what is going to print? Yes, how are you is going to print. So we start from index number 4 and we go all the way to the very end. Therefore, we just have how are you? What if I have 4 colon 16? What do you guys think is going to happen here? So remember that the second number is it goes up to, but not including this number. So for the 16, it'll go up to 16, but not including 16. So it should also print out the same exact thing. So how are you will print out here. So these last 4, I think, are trickier ones. So the last 4 last three, sorry, I can't count. The last three are trickier ones. So for this one, I'm actually going to, we're going to do together. We're going to code it out. That way you guys can see what's going on. And I'm going to switch over to my notebook right now. Also, I've been having internet issues all day today. So if you can't see something or if I start lagging, please let me know as soon as possible. That way I could try to switch things up or like switch to like a hotspot or something. Okay, we're going to use that string that we were using before. The string, which is, hi, how are you? And the things that we want to print. So the first thing that we want to print is string, and then we have brackets, and then the colon. What do you guys think is going to happen here? What do you think is going to print? Hi, how are you? Okay, so yes, the entire thing prints. So hopefully you guys are able to pick up the hint that because there is no beginning, no start, that means you start from index 0. Also, because there's no end indicated, you go to the end of the string. Which means you start from the very beginning, index number 0, and you go all the way to the very, very end of the string. So hi, how are you? That will be what you have. What if I did print string 4 to 3897? This one's really tricky. So if you take a look, what prints? It is hi, how are you? So some of you guys might be wondering why, or sorry, not hi, how are you? Some of you guys are probably wondering like, why is it how are you? Why am I not getting an error? So slicing works a little bit different from grabbing an index. If I were to try to have done instead string 3897, this gives me an error. This getting an index out of the range, or like trying to grab one specific character will give an error. But this, however, does not give an error. So be a little bit wary about that. Nothing like this should come up on the AP exam. It's just something that I hope that you guys made an observation about. We start at index number 4. Index number 4 being, hold on a second, oops. What's going on? So index number 4 was the H for how. So that's the reason why we get how are you. But remember that when you try to get a specific index that's outside of a range, then you'll get an error. Which brings me to something else that's pretty interesting in Python and specific to Python. So not on the AP test. What this will give, -4. You get U with a question mark. So the reason why this happens is because we know that this is index number 0. So if we try to figure out what index -1 is, that will actually be our question mark, will be our index number -1. And then our U will give us index number -2. And then our O will give us index number -3. And then our Y is something that actually gives us index number -4. But I also want to emphasize that this shouldn't work, at least for something. Oh, it does work. Okay, just kidding. Then what was I thinking about? Okay, so when you do negative indices, which I do not recommend, by the way, just use the positive index numbers. The negative index numbers should only, I would say, use it when convenient. Always try to use the positive indices because this is specific to Python. Most languages, like or I mean, not most languages, but like C++ for sure, you cannot do using negative indices. At least I don't think so. I think Java you can, but always try to stick with the positive indices. But in the case that you do have to use them, that is available to you. So print string -4. Going back to the PowerPoint, just so that we could note the different things that we just did. So when we did string colon, we got the entire thing. This says, hi, how are you? And then when we did 4 to 3897, that was from here to the very end. So this just gave us, how are you? But when we did -4, we start off with 0. When we wrap back around, actually maybe that was not the best way to wrap all the way around, but this would be -1, -2, -3, -4. And this is where we start and we go to the very end. So this gives us you, question mark, from here and on. Does anyone have any questions about this? I am going to skip this for now. We'll come back to this. I actually want to go through this. So how to access every character in a string. And the best way, in my opinion, to do this is through example. So let's say I give you a string. And the string is hello world. I want you to take this string and print out every individual character on a separate line. So it is going to be H and then E and then L and then L and then O and then space and then W. So like, this is how I want you to do it. Because you are getting one character printing it out, getting another character printing it out, getting another character printing it out, and you're just doing this process, this repetitive process, you need a loop. You're doing the same thing over and over again. You're going to get a character, then you're going to print character. Then you're going to get the character, and then you're going to print the character, and then you get the character, and then print the character. It's a cycle that you just do over and over and over again. It's repetitive. That just means loop. Remember, if you're doing something over and over again, loop. Just do a loop. That way you don't have to write out your code for rewrite your code, like get character, print character, get character, print character. Just do one loop, and that's it. That's all you need to do to get it over with. So we're going to talk about different loops in order to get this done. So the first loop I'm going to talk about is to use a while loop. So given a string, we want to print out every single character on separate lines, starting from where? Well, if you think about how the loops are labeled or how everything is labeled in a string, we have indices. The first character we want to get is capital H, which is index 0. So that means I want to start with my index equal to 0. And I want to keep going. I want to get, whoa, what just happened? And I want to keep going. I want to get the next character. So index number 1, and then index number 2, and then index number 3. So hopefully you can see that I am incrementing my index by 1 each time. Then I get the next one, then I get the next one, then I get the next one, next one, until I've hit the very, very end. So the very last index is index number 11, but I want you guys to hopefully see this really important observation. In terms of the number of things that are inside of my string, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this gives us the number of characters, whereas this right here is indices. There's 12 things inside of my string. So another way for you to actually calculate this, other than us specifically counting it, is Python counting it for us. And they have a function for that. This is the length of the string. If you use this function, it'll give you 12. No matter what string you use, the very last index will be one less than the number of characters you have. If I have 12 characters, we should expect that the index, the very last index, is 11. If I have 500 characters, then the very last index should be 499. If I have 2 characters, then that means my last index would be 1. That's because everything is offset by 1. My index, instead of starting at 1, it starts at 0. So the last character, instead of completely matching up, or the last index, instead of completely matching up, it'll just be 1 off, specifically 1 less than the length itself. Which brings us to our condition. I want to go all the way up to the very end of the string, but stop 1 short of the length. So I have a couple of options that I can do here. So option number 1, I can continue while my index is less than or equal to the length of the string minus 1. My other option is to continue this while the index is just less than the length. Less than the length of the string. So these are my 2 options, or the 2 best options in my opinion. I certainly prefer this one more just because it is shorter. But you'll also see how this one could have, how this one translates into other methods a bit better. So we're going to use this one, but, or we're going to use this one for the most part. But for this specific example, I want to use both of them. That way you can see that there is no difference between them. In terms of the action, we want to get a specific character based off of the index. So what we're going to do, I'm actually going to fill this in just a little bit later. I'm going to go straight into the notebook. We're going to code this out based off the observations that I have here. And then we will do a run through of it on a different sheet of paper. And hopefully that will make things a little bit easier for those of you who are working with strings and loops for the first time, or like a combination of strings and loops for the first time. All right, so this one right here, the purpose of this is our while loop strategy of printing out every character on separate lines. Actually, we could just write it here. So in terms of where we start, we decided that we want to start where the index is 0, which makes sense. We want to start with the very 0th character. The condition, we have 2 conditions. I'm going to write them both out. The first one was while the index is less than or equal to the length of the string minus 1. And the second one was while the index, oh, I forgot about the commenting. While the index is less than the length of the string. Like I said, this one is the preferred one, but then if you like number 1 more, that's perfectly fine to use as well. They both work. We also agree that we want to increment index by 1 each time. And then the action, we are going to go back and fill in later. So let's say my string is, I use hello world in this example. Remember, you want to always create your start, or like you want to initialize a variable first that is going to be used for the loop. In this case, it's going to be index is equal to 0. That is our start. And that is also imperative to any while loop that you create. Then after that, you want to go ahead and write out your condition. So the first condition I'm going to do is the condition number 1, which is while the index is less than or equal to the length of the string minus 1. I'm going to do this one first, and then we're going to go back and then change it up so that you guys can see that we get exactly the same thing. So we have something here that it should ideally print out every character on a different line. And it should do it in a way so that no matter what, even if I change a string or if I change the characters that are in there, it should work perfectly fine. That's the reason why we also want to increment the index. That way we can go through every single index in the string. So index plus equals 1. But before that, what should the action be? What is of utmost importance? What is the goal of this? What other code am I missing in this code block? Printing, exactly. And what exactly do I want to print here? Very good. String index. That is what we want to print. So when I run this, you can see hello world will print out on every single individual line. If I change this so that instead of it saying this, let's say I have it, oops, so that it prints out like, or I have this, so it's while my index is less than the length of the string. This gives me exactly the same thing. So some important things. First off, the length of the string. If I'm curious about the length of the string, len is the function to get the length. It's built into Python already. The length, to get the length of a string in AP Computer Science Principles, it's almost the same exact thing, except instead of using len, they use len, they just spell length. They just use the word length to get the length of the string. So once again, we'll talk about this a little bit more in 2021. I will introduce to you guys the exact syntax of the AP Computer Science Principles exam, which is almost identical to Python, which is why we're doing Python. But the unfortunate thing about the AP Computer Science Principles syntax that they use for the code is that it's not like a real language. So you cannot actually type things out and do things with it. Hence Python, where it's the closest thing that we have to the syntax that they use on the AP exam. So if you understand what I'm talking about here, it'll maybe just take like 30 minutes of adjustment before you feel comfortable with the syntax that they use for the AP exam. So it'll be fine. But here, if we print out the length of the string, now you'll see that this number 12 right here prints. 12 is a number of characters in string. So length just means the number of the total number of characters. This right here was the action. Where we print out the specific character given the index. Remember, index starts at 0 and index builds, it increments. It goes to 1, then 2, then 3, all the way up to, but not including the actual length of the string. So the length of the string was 12, so that means we go up to 12, but not including 12, so we actually go up to the number 11. So we go up to the number 11, and then that's it. We're done. Some of you guys might be wondering, why didn't I just put in 12 right here? The reason why I didn't put in 12 there is because I could easily change the string. So let's say I did decide to put in 12. So it'll work for this. Like it prints out hello world, but then if I change this to hello world, this is AP CSP, I still get hello world despite there being 26 characters now. So instead of hard coding in a number, we want to make this as flexible as possible. That way it could print out everything no matter what I use as an input. So here my input is hello world, this is APCSP. This is based off this string directly. So if I run it, it works. Hello world, this is APCSP. Despite the fact that I changed the string, because this is dependent on my string, like my condition is dependent on my string. You could also see that my print statement is directly dependent on my string as well. So overall, no matter what I plug in for string, if I decide to add a couple more exclamation marks, oh, did I put a slash? I actually put a slash in there too. But even if I decide to put in some extra characters or remove characters, it'll work exactly as intended, because the length of the string will change along with the string. With the length of the string changing, my condition will also be molded so that it works with the problem situation. So always keep that in mind. Always remember, don't try to hard code in numbers. Try to keep it as flexible as possible so that no matter what the input is, no matter what factors change, your code can run seamlessly. That being said, I'm going to change this back to hello world. That way we can do a quick code. We could do a run through of this code. One moment. Everyone sees this okay? Oh, no, just kidding. You guys can't. Now do you guys see this okay? You guys see this? The screenshot of the code that we just typed out? Okay, perfect. So let's just do a quick run through. Because it's already 3, I think I'm only going to run through the actual, like the things that are not commented out. So this part right here, including this is what I'm going to run through. I don't think I'll have time to go through this part right here, but if you do have that time, I definitely recommend that you guys go through it. That way you could see exactly what the minor difference is. And hopefully you could also see that regardless, it works exactly the same. Let's start with our index. Index is equal to 0. And also, let me write this out. Our string is hello. Hello. Oh, I'm not going to have room for this. Let me write this a little smaller then. GLLO space WORLD exclamation mark. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We started off with index 0 right here. We're in this line. We're going to fall into the while loop. While index is less than the length of the string. So what is the length of the string? Hopefully you guys remember that the length of the string was 12. We can see that in two different ways. First off, when we initially printed it, it should print out 12, but also on top of that, you can see the very last index is 11, which means that the length is one more than that, 12. So rather than really seeing this as the length of the string, maybe you want to instead think of this as the number 12. Is the index less than 12? In this case, index is 0, so that is less than 12. We're going to print out string, and then whatever our index is, and our index is 0. That is this right here. So what we'll print, first off, I guess we'll call this our like box. This is like a print log. H will print first. Then we have to increment our index. So we add 1 to our index. Index will no longer be 0. Index will increment to 1. Then we circle back around to the while loop and verify if index is less than 12, which it is. So it is going to go into the body of the while loop, print out string, and then index. Index is currently 1, so we print out string 1, and that here is this E. So we print out, this is H, this is E, so E will print out here. The next line is to increment index. So index will now become 2. We print out, or actually, let's slow down. We go back around to verify if index is less than 12, which it is. So we go back inside that code block, print out string, and then index. Index is 2, so we print out string 2, and that is this L. So we print out L. So let's pretend that we've like done enough, and now we are at index is equal to 10. So now that we're at index is equal to 10, we're gonna verify if index is less than 12, which it is. 10 is less than 12. So we are going to print string and then index, and our current index is 10, and that is this D right here. So it's going to print out D. Then we increment index. So index is now 11. We go back up and around and check if index is less than 12, which it is. So we go inside the code block to print and then string index, which is 11, which is this guy over here, this exclamation mark. So 11, this is the exclamation mark, so the exclamation mark will print. And then we increment index. And then we verify if index is less than 12, which it is not. 12 is equal to 12, 12 is not less than 12, so we are done. So we ideally should get HELLO space WORLD exclamation mark, and that will be the end of it. Does anyone have any questions? All right, So the action that we need to include here was to print out a string with the index. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next strategy, which is the for loop. The for loop is almost identical. It's pretty much identical to whatever we used for the while loop. It's just that it's not a while loop. It's a for loop instead. But everything else is exactly the same. When we think about where we start for our for loop, we should start in the same exact position. We should start where we have h, and where we have h is index 0. So we want to start where index is 0, and we want to go to the very, very end, which is index number 11. But remember, we don't want to hard code and be like, go up to, but not including 11. We want to make it flexible as possible. So we want to go up to, but not including the length of the string. So we're seeing this again. In terms of step size, you want to hit every single character, and each character, if you look, is one index greater than the previous one. So the step size is just 1. And the action for our for loop is going to be identical to the action of our while loop. We saw that the actions for both should be exactly the same thing because a for loop and a while loop are almost identical. So we just want to print out whatever character is at a specific index of that string. So let's go ahead and translate this into actual code. Everyone can see this, okay? The for loop or the notebook? Okay, perfect. So this is the for loop. Still printing out every character on separate lines. So let's go ahead and start by indicating where we start, and we know that we start at index is equal to 0. Where we end is up to, but not including the length of the string. And then our step size was 1. And then we have that our action was to print string index. And we'll use the same string for now, hello world. So we have to do a for loop. And remember, for a for loop, we normally do for and then our variable name. So in this case, our variable, we're just using index. In range. What is our range? Where do we start? Where do we go up to? What is the step size? So how would we write this out? Yes, the shortest way to do this would be in range length of the string. So actually, you can make it much longer. You could do in range 0, comma length string, comma 1. But remember, if you omit this right here, if you write it like range 0, comma length of the string, this assumes step size is 1, which is exactly what we have anyways. Furthermore, if you decide to also omit the 0 right here and just go with the length of the string, this assumes step size is 1, and and start is 0. So the shortest, all three of these work. This right here works, this right here works, and this right here all work. It's just that this one, the in range length of string, is the shortest way to write it. If you guys are into shortcuts, it doesn't save you a whole lot, but it does something. And then all we need to do is print out the string index. That's it. So if I run this, I get hello world. And once again, because our range is dependent on the string, I could change hello world to anything I want. I could change it to hello world, wow Python, smiley face. And then this will print out exactly, or this will work exactly as intended because of the flexibility that we allowed upon this code. Doesn't look, the smiley face just doesn't look as good though. My only complaint. So going back to this, that way we can walk through this code. I'm running out of time. All right, do you guys see this okay? Oh no, you guys don't yet because I haven't resumed. All right, now do you guys see this okay? All right, perfect. So we're gonna walk through this part of the code, and then if we have time, hopefully talk about our third strategy, which is personally my favorite strategy, and also the strategy that also comes up on the AP test. I mean, all of these strategies will come up on the AP test, but then that third strategy is one that we haven't talked about yet. But our string is currently hello world again. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 11. If we consider the length of the string is going to be one more than the last index, and that is 12. So when I go straight into here, and then I say for index in range length string, we know that that means the start is 0, and the end is going up to the length of the string, which is 12, but remember you don't actually include 12, you go up to 12, and that will give you the number 11. So our range, or actually I forgot step size is 1. So our range is going to consist of all numbers between 0 and 11. So our range 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 11. Now we are going to go into this line because we've started our range. We're going to get for each index, for each index in the range, meaning our very first index is 0. So index is equal to 0 because that's our first number in the range. We're going to print out string and then whatever the index is, currently 0. So this is going to print out the H. Then we circle back around to the beginning of the for loop and get our next number in the range, which is 1. So index is now equal to 1. We are going to print string and then index. Index is currently 1. And that gives us E. Circle back around to get the next index in the range. And that index, or that next number in the range is 2. So we print string 2, and this will give you the L. And then once again, kind of like last time, I'm just going to assume that we've safely arrived all the way to number 10. So index 10, index is equal to 10 at the moment, because I'm at this point. And I'm going to print string and then whatever my index number is, oops, that is 10. And that number, or that character is D. So it'll print out D. I'm going to move on to the next number in my range, and that is 11. So index is equal to 11. So I print out string 11, and that is the exclamation mark. I've exhausted everything from my range, so I'm done now. So here, hello world, where every single character is on a different line, is going to print. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, so we do have some time left. So I want to at least introduce the next, the third strategy. So we finished this one. So the third strategy is or I guess strategy number 2, because we did strategy 0, 1, and 2. Like you guys saw what I did there, because we learned about index 0 and okay, never mind. So we have strategy number 2. Technically, the third strategy is the for each loop. So what we want to do, when I was explaining the question to you, I was always saying for each thing, like for each whatever in this. You are going to take that, and that is going to be your actual loop now. So what do we want to do in the question? For each character in the string, we want to print out that character. And that's exactly what you're going to write. Ignore this, you don't need that. So for each character in the string, all you want to do is print out the character. This is pretty much what our code is going to look like. That is the beauty of a for each loop, because it's so similar to regular English. If I were to tell you, oh yeah, from index 0 to index 12, print out string whatever, string index, that doesn't make as much sense to someone who's beginning to code as for each character in the string, print out the character. But you'll see that this is exactly what we're going to type in for our code. So this is our for each loop. And for this for each loop, we're printing out every character on separate lines. So quite literally, what we're trying to do is for each character in string, print the character. So if our string is hello world. For each character in the string, we want to print out the character. Boom, done. So hopefully you guys could see what's going on here. This also is super flexible because I could change the string. Hello world. Hello everyone. And it still works because this is still getting like for each character in the string, you're printing out the character, and Python is able to correctly identify each character in the string. I know I'm using very specific variables, but I could change up the variables. I could change this to a C. I could change this to a C, and it will still work because this variable that I give right here is just a variable that is just a label that I'm giving. And as long as I'm correctly identifying what I want to use in specific situations, that's perfectly fine. So for each C in the string, so that C means like each character, we want to print out that character which is currently being stored in C. So this is just another way that you could write out a for loop, or actually write out a loop. But it's a little bit different from a numerical for loop. Does anyone have any questions about this? Okay, I'm gonna bring this back down to hello world. Okay. Let's go back to the last slide I want to cover for today, and then we'll just pick back up in 2 weeks because we have Thanksgiving next week. So when do we know when to use a specific strategy? So here's a couple of notes that I have for you. This is not a definitive guide. However, this is for sure the ones that you should know if you are interested in using Python long term. So if you need to start at the end of the string, so if you need to start at the very end as opposed to the very beginning. So the examples that we did today, they were all at the very beginning. We started at the 0th index. You could use a for each loop for that if it's at the very beginning. But if you're not starting at the beginning, if you start at the very end, then you want to use a while loop or a for loop. If you need to use the index of the character, so if you're interested in exactly where a specific character is, as opposed to just using the character itself, then you have to use a while loop or a for loop. Otherwise, feel free to use a for each loop. Also, if you need to access some and not all characters in the string, so let's say you only want every other character, or if you only want even only characters that only indices that have a 1 in it, something along those lines, then you want to use a while loop or for loop instead of a for each loop, because a for each loop will hit every single character in a very specific order from the very beginning to the very end. Everything that can be done with a for each loop can be done with a while loop or a for loop. However, the same thing cannot be said for the other way around. So exactly what I've been talking about for these 3 points right here. There's some instances where you can use a for each loop, but not always. You can't always use a for each loop, even though it's super convenient. But that being said, you will be using it quite a bit.